Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined today on this beautiful afternoon because, I thank God I cut the lawn earlier. Anyway, that's a cut point. So we are joined by two very talented individuals. One is the president of Omen Comics as well as Revelations Comics. And another is a returning guest who is also a writer and, a very talented person in his own right. He was back on earlier, a couple of months back, talking about Albino Warrior, Dragon Girl, Albino Warrior, because, I can always get names right. We're joined today by the ever-talented Steve Sellers and, of course, Michael Nunneley. How you guys doing today?
Oh, doing great, man. Thanks for having us on.
Life is great.
So, for those that don't know anything about yourselves as creative people, tell us who you are and what you're bringing to Two Geeks Talking.
Okay.
This can be for either of you.
Okay. My name is Michael Nunneley, and I'm here to talk about Omen Comics in general, but a little bit about what's coming up, and discuss kind of where our comics are at and that type of thing.
Steve?
Yeah, I'm Steve Sellers, and I'm mainly here to talk about the Omen comics that I write, which is mainly White Druid and Michael Nero and Guardians of Elaine, as well as Revelation comics, particularly my superhero comic Blitz. And, we may along the way slip in that we also do some writing for Rain Cross Press for an upcoming book called Blood World.
Awesome. Well, this is great. So we have a lot of content to go over. Not a lot of time to do it, unfortunately, but that's the way interviews are. So who wants to go first in terms of regarding your comic writing process? Because I think that's fascinating. We'll talk about being a president as well, Steve, too, especially why you wanted to create those companies and what you've worked on in the future. But as a writer, and this is for either of you, for both of you, I should say, what is the hardest part about writing, the beginning, the middle, or the end of your process?
Middle, definitely middle. I usually know more or less the basic idea of what I want. I usually know kind of where to start it. And I usually know more or less where I'm aiming towards, even if I don't have like an exact specific thing. But trying to sometimes it's to be a bit of work getting from point A to point B, especially if like you're right in the middle and you're trying to make it engaging and not trying to drop in things that are extraneous, those kinds of things. But you kind of have to work those out. I mean, it's just, one of those things you kind of have to get through, and you get through it and you go to the next one. I mean, it really is just a matter of knowing your characters, trusting your characters to do what they need to do, and then trusting in yourself to be able to know what the next piece is and how to connect the dots.
How about you, Michael?
I guess for me, I tend to actually start at the end of the story and work my way back. I usually get a good idea of exactly how the end scenario is going to be set up and who's going to be there and what's going to be going on. And then I kind of work it back to, how the heck did they get there type of thing. So I suppose the most difficult part for me is often where to start the story. But once I get that beginning done, the middle kind of fills itself in when I'm doing the outline and stuff for the story. But it's definitely working in reverse process. I know what I want to accomplish with it, and it's a matter of trying to figure out how to get there.
So then let's talk about Omen Comics and Revelation Comics. So Steve, as the president here, how did you come up with the company, and why did you want to create these companies?
Well, it really all started with Omen Comics. Mike kind of brought me in when we were doing a review website called the Chico Comics page. And so I was kind of brought in to write White Druid and Michael Nero at the start of it. And then eventually, we started building the whole Omenverse. Mike knew what he wanted to do with that, but we eventually kind of realized that there were things that we wanted to tell that didn't fit into the Omenverse. So basically, we kind of created Revelation as an umbrella for basically everything that the in-house team at Omen wanted to do that did not fit into the Omenverse as established by Mike and the rest of us. And basically, my whole idea of it was that this would be kind of like for passion projects. This would be for, kind of experimental type of comics, things that, we don't typically do in our other titles. So, you have Mike going off and doing Viking grimdark horror stuff, and you have me doing superhero stuff. And, our artist, Tosin Awosika, decided to do a Nigerian war comic. So, it's basically a diverse line with the idea, of telling the kinds of stories that, the Omenverse just will not let us do because of the nature of that universe.
Nice.
Yeah, as I recall, it was specifically with forming Revelation Comics that Steve had this character Blitz and this kind of world he was talking about maybe doing. I think he was talking about maybe a prose approach to it or whatever. And I totally hit him up. I was like, "Hey, man, what about doing that comic with us?" And it was actually figuring out how to do that logistically that kind of led to the formation of Revelation Comics. In fact, even the name Revelation Comics comes from I believe an organization.
It's one of the factions in my universe. Yeah.
I guess as far as Omen Comics goes, there's actually there's a little bit of a backstory there. I got hired. I use hired in quotations to do a comic, and the guy ended up being the idea was we were going to do this Kickstarter and everybody was going to get paid from that, and the guy just kept going artist after artist after artist because he wasn't paying anybody up front at all, and consequently it turns out by the time I had written 3 issues for the guy that he wasn't actually all that serious about making a comic in general. And so I kind of actually helped him create a character called Omen, and a universe of other characters based on characters I had already had together. And I told him, "All right, man. Well, I'm walking with the rights to the characters we did." And I actually named the company Omen Comics to spite him after naming it after the character that I created for him there.
And I always used to think it was because he loved Damien.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can always love a devil-infused child of scamp that he is, It's
right.
Always fun times, or end of times, one of those two. So then, looking at what you created, the world of Omen Comics here, what has been the reaction from those that have been following your various series throughout?
In general, the reaction to those that have actually read the books have been pretty good. I suppose our only real issue is really the audience. We kind of jumped in and started running without really building up an audience first, and I think that's part of the reason why the readership is as low as it is. But I mean, for the 40, 50 people that have read the comics, I'm going to say that they genuinely really like it. They like what's going on. They like the feel of the comic. They like the art. I mean, it's been pretty positive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't know if you wanted to add anything, Steve.
Not too much. I know we've reviewed pretty well from what I've seen. But I don't have like a whole lot substantive to add beyond that. I think we've done pretty well so far with the characters that we have, and the people that tend to follow us are usually pretty loyal. So I really appreciate everybody who's done that.
But it's also good to the fact that even though you hit the ground running with your various series that you have here, it's better to have content than to have nothing at all.
It is true. I mean, you definitely gotta put yourself out there. You know, if you want to get into making comics, the key part is making a comic. but I mean, there's definitely something to the whole building your audience thing. Really taking the time to get people interested in what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. You know, you got to sell the steak and the sizzle. That kind of an idea.
So then, in regards to the series that you have here, and Steve, we'll ask this question of you here. Tell us what White Druid is about.
Yeah, White Druid and Michael Nero. Basically, the idea behind this is that Michael Nero is a cult detective. He is kind of like the Sherlock Holmes of magic, more or less. And he is also the apprentice of a 5,000 or so year old god from the Irish pantheon, Luo Shi, and he is the White Druid in the title. So very much what it is it's very much almost like it's kind of like if Holmes and Watson were also a master an apprentice student relationship, and also kind of like an adopted son relationship. Nero in many ways is a self-destructive character. He is a character who has this power called the third sight, which allows him to see spirits and demonic presences, other planes, all these other planes of existence, and he can't control it. So, he's always seeing like these Lovecraftian things around the corner, and he can't do a whole lot about it. And that's why he needs Lou, because Lou is the one who's been kind of teaching him to cope with this ability and, teaching him magic in order to deal with the things that he finds. So there is a lot of that. But at the same time, Nero is a very abrasive person. He is bluntly honest to a fault, and he likes to be very snarky and very irritating. And so he, a lot of it is about like his trying to do the right thing, but the thing is that he's trying to do it against his own nature, which is often very difficult to deal with.
Nice, love it. So then how about Blitz? Because I saw the images you sent, and I greatly appreciate those. And they look beautiful, by the way. So I love the art. So we'll talk about your teams as well, who you've had working on these comics as well, too. But talk about Blitz, because that seemed like a really interesting concept.
Yeah, the idea that I had with Blitz, and I came up with this character in the early 2000s or so. And it kind of came out of like a online role-playing game that I was doing. And actually this character pretty much just jumped out of nowhere, which is this, 18, 19-year-old speedster who just finds an object in a junkyard, which has all of these things that have been abandoned from various superhero battles. And it's all collecting dust. And she just finds one day, and it turns her into a speedster. The thing with her, though, is she has the heart of a hero. She really wants to do the right thing, but the thing is she has no clue how to do it. She does not have like Barry Allen to teach her how to use her powers. She has to figure these things out by herself. And she ends up partnering with somebody who is probably not the best influence. And I call him the devil on her shoulder. And that is Night Spider, Roland Travis. He is a former criminal. He is a gentleman thief who is under a magic curse, and it forces him to either do good or he suffers like constant spiritual pain. So he's trying to, find a line between who he is and who he wants to be, basically. And so he decides to take, for his own reasons, to take Blitz under his wing. Teaching her because he's also a trained ninja as well as a gentleman thief. So he knows all the skills of being a hero. He knows, how to fight. He knows, how to infiltrate organizations and, get the kinds of things that he wants from them. But what he doesn't know how to do is be a hero. And so I just love the idea of these two characters who are very, very different, kind of being forced to work together, and in a city where really there are not a whole lot of heroic presence for a while, and it's for reasons due to the universe that I'll get into the series itself. But I just think that core dynamic is really where a lot of it comes from.
Excuse me. Trying to not cough while you're talking.
That's all right.
So then, since we last talked, Michael, what's going on with Dragon Girl Albino Warrior?
I last time we talked, the comic was doing a Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
That was not successful, but the comic was still published. You can find it at the Wikid store on KDP as well as Global Comics. But the story is still going on. I'm actually in the middle of writing issue number 3 for the series. So I mean, we're still going to keep going. But one of the things, I mentioned earlier about how we didn't really take the time to build up our audience.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I think that is part of the reason why we have not had successful Kickstarters as of late. So what our thought was is that we would after Dragon Girl Albino Warrior was unsuccessful, we were going to take some time and really just kind of build our audience and kind of get caught up with things and stuff, really get our feet back under us again before everything gets rolling again. But we are going to be putting out about one comic a year for the next 2 years. The very next one coming out is a Revelation comic called SAD, stands for Sad and Desperate. And that's another one from our artist Tosin Awosika.
Nice.
That one has like a Nigerian mythology. It has conspiracy in it. It has monsters in it. That story just goes crazy. It is all over the place. I actually scripted that for him. That was a lot of fun. But I believe that's the next one coming out from Revelation Comics. And then with Omen Comics, the year after that, we got a really big comic coming out called Dark Oracles. That is going to be a 56-pager, and it's actually going to be a 23-page story from Steve and a 23-page story from me.
Wow.
So it's the purpose of the title is really to tell all the backstories and side stories in Omen Comics that just don't fit well into the flow of the story, or would kind of take us out of the pacing of the thing to tell. And so Dark Oracles really helps fill in all the little gaps and let you know all the little backstories and stuff. Like Steve, you should actually talk a little bit about that Dark Oracles thing there with your with how that connects to Guardians of Alea.
Yes.
Sorry. But before you do that, let's do a quick disconnect and reconnect, because something's going to appear on the screen.
Okay.
So let's
sure, we can do that.
All right.
Good break point. Same link. Okay.
Voila.
All right. So there's Steve.
Yep.
All right. So Steve, you were going to talk about how Guardians
Dark Oracles
and Dark Oracles. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So basically, Dark Oracles kind of has as a spine basically our Rod Serling / Crypt Keeper character, and that is the Egyptian god Thoth, and he is somebody who is obsessed with getting information, and reporting back to Ra about the various things that he finds in time and space. And so the way that this connects to Dark Oracles, he's a character that shows up in Guardians of Alea as well. Early on in the first issue, I believe he shows up. And so we're kind of giving him more or less this title in order to breathe a little bit. and he is kind of like the one that's doing the bookends with both of the stories that we're doing in the middle of that. Mike, I believe, is doing a story called The Chronicles of Nod, but I'll let him talk about that if he wants to. The one that I'm doing is called, for the first issue, is called Rose of Seleucia, which is basically the trial of Nazrin of Parthia. And Nazrin is one of the main characters from Guardians. And she is basically a princess of an actual historical land called Parthia. And it takes place somewhere like in the vicinity of Iran and Iraq, that kind of area. And there's not a whole lot that's really known about that particular culture. So I had a little bit of room to kind of play with that. But really the idea is how Nazrin's character got started, how she became the person that she is in Guardians, some of the things in her past, her regrets because of things that happened in the story, and basically kind of like what causes her to go to Jerusalem, where we see her in Guardians 1.
With Chronicles of Nod, to make the Omenverse, I had to combine the myths and folklore of the world into one universe, and that's actually that's more difficult than it may sound. All of the gods and every mythology believe they're the only gods there are. So trying to get them all to fit into the same universe without contradicting each other took a lot of work. I used the Christian, at least a version of the Christian God as the central figure in the story. Now, granted, this is nothing like the actual Christian God. This is, all of these characters are totally fictional, but. I had to rewrite the story of how we call him El in that story, how El came into power over all the other gods, and then particularly the beginning of the story with Adam and Eve and the start of man. I particularly wanted to explore, Cain kills Abel in the original story there, but why? What made Cain so different from Abel, that he was a murderer and Abel was not? I really wanted to explore that kind of stuff. In fact, the title of the story that I'm doing in Dark Oracles there, that first story, is What Separates Us from Them, and it's really about what makes the Cain family different.
Mythology and religion are obviously rather interesting. Mythology is more interesting than religion, in my opinion, but I like history, so that's just me. Not much of a religious guy. But when it comes to mythology and comics, though, why is this so fascinating to each of you when you create your works?
I personally have loved mythology since I was a boy. I got into it with stuff like Jason and the Argonauts, and particularly, I believe it was in 1982, I think it was, that Clash of the Titans came out. That one really, really inspired me. I mean, after watching Clash of the Titans, I immediately started going to the library, both the city library and the ones at school, getting out any mythology books they had and just devouring it all. I loved the whole idea of these superpowered beings and even regular people just doing fantastic things. There was magic and fantasy involved. I was fascinated by the whole thing, and honestly, it's honest. That love of that type of story is honestly what drug me into comic books. The very first comic I ever purchased was a Mighty Thor comic.
Yeah, it was something similar to me as well. I do remember Clash of the Titans when I was young, but I think a lot of it really was that I discovered the books on Greek mythology when I was fairly young. There was a trip to England that I took, and I got a number of mythology books, and I kind of absorbed those. And I really kind of got into those. And then, of course, just kind of reading Marvel's version of Thor and Hercules and things like that. So I think mythology on some level has always kind of been on the brain to various degrees. And then my eyes were really expanded with things like Sandman, which heavily delved into various mythologies as well. And it kind of showed you what was possible. So pretty much we've kind of gotten to the point where our entire universe is based on just about every form of mythology you can probably find.
Nice. That's awesome. And it also allows people that are interested or maybe haven't heard of various mythologies to kind of look into it themselves if they're interested.
Right. I feel like I should mention though that while it is a blend of mythologies, I mean, and I already mentioned there were some changes that had to be made to the gods in order to get them all to work together. There are some differences. For instance, Omen Comics has a lot of apocalyptic themes going into it. In fact, the whole first major part of the story is dealing with an apocalypse level event. So it has that in it, as well as with me being a huge horror fan. There are definitely horror elements in it. There is some sci-fi stuff in it. It is not just mythology. The heroes in the story, however, with the exception of Dragon Girl, Albino Warrior, are genuinely broken people and are often just heroes and despite themselves.
Nice. Okay. Well, good caveat to have.
Yeah.
Now, looking at everything that you've both created, what are 3 things that you are, hang on, I gotta look at that question. There we go. What are 3 things that you are proud of that you've accomplished? And what are 3 things that you were looking at accomplishing in 2023?
You want to? Well, I guess for me, I'm really proud of the fact that we've put out as many comics as we have. I feel like over the process, I kind of dove into the deep end and then taught myself how to swim as far as making comics goes, and I feel like I'm really coming into my own now, and I'm really starting to be proud of my work that I'm putting out. I'm really starting to be confident in the quality of our books. So that's really cool. One little side thing. Me and Steve are going to be starting the 4th season of our podcast this coming this January, and I'm really excited about that. I mean, we've got 70 plus episodes recorded, and it's just we've put a lot of work into those, and I feel like we've really kind of reached a mile marker with this. Like we finally really accomplished something big with it.
Yeah, I would say definitely getting as many books out as I have. I definitely take a certain pride in White Druid and Michael Nero #1. I mean, I feel like I've gotten better as a writer since then, but that book got a lot of really good reception, and I really feel like that kind of got the rest of it going. So I have a certain amount of pride in that. I would say Blitz #1 for sure, because that's my baby. That. I mean, that is the book that I would say is probably for me the most personal. So I'm glad to finally, see the first issue out there, and I'm looking forward to getting the other ones done. In fact, my latest work that I've been trying to do is just getting, the later issues of those written. So that's something I'm really looking forward to finally getting out with once that's done. Beyond that, I would also say Guardians of the Land #1. That was a really tough script to get out because it involved a lot of research. It involved getting a lot of different characters together. It involved, just trying to figure out things like, what Romans would use for a latrine as an equivalent to a latrine, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like it came together really, really well. I think that Tosin Awosika did an amazing job on the art. I think he got the exact look that I wanted to for Jerusalem. So that came out really well. So I'm really happy with that issue particularly.
Nice. Good stuff. What's the most misunderstood aspect about being a writer that people maybe that aren't in the industry make assumptions of?
We both did a hum there.
Yeah, it was like, where do you want to start with that?
Right.
Yeah, I would say probably one thing is that it's like, to people that haven't written, it seems like it's either a really easy job or it's like something nobody can do. I think it's in the middle of that. Because you can start off somewhere where you're not that good and you gradually get better. You get the cobwebs out. after a while. And my earliest stuff when I was 15 was garbage, absolute garbage. But I like to think that, just, working at it and constantly working at it and continuing to get better and, knowing how to use the visual storytelling elements and all of these other things, gradually, I feel like I've gotten to a place where at least I can put my stuff out there and not, feel like I have to laugh at myself. And I think it's true for most people as well. I mean, if you put enough time, work, and effort, and you try to understand how it works, and you're able to put your ego aside, enough to see your work, as objectively as you reasonably can. If you can do those things, I think it is possible to become a better writer, even if you're not at the beginning.
Definitely. I guess I would say that. One of the biggest things I come across as a horror writer is the assumption that you are like what you write.
God, I hope not.
Right? Like
this is the guy that created Patrick O'Leary,
right? I've dealt with that a lot in particular, especially with scenes like in Gallows Men 2. There's some very graphic violence in there. It's just, I guess my point is that being able to imagine something and to put it into a story does not reflect who the author is as a person. For instance, I don't believe that all people who write romance novels are particularly romantic all the time. They don't necessarily have to be. I mean, I think about that Jack Nicholson as that romance writer in that movie where his whole perception of romance was, well, I think of a man and then I take away what was it, accountability,
reason and accountability,
like that kind of thing. Just that you can write really dark and twisted stories and it doesn't actually reflect you as a person. That I think the conception that you are what you write is really just kind of backwards.
It's overblown.
Yeah.
I mean, you need a certain spark of yourself in order to get into the character, but beyond a certain point, they go into different directions that are not you, and you have to write a lot of different perspectives that you don't share. So that, I reject that as well.
I would also say my search history does not reflect who I am as a person.
Just gonna say, any government that happens to be watching and or listening to these interviews, don't pry into anyone's search history that are writers or creative people. It's not going to look good.
Right.
No, really, I just wanted to figure out how fast a body falls off of a bridge that gets pushed.
Right.
It is what it is.
Oh man.
So then, looking at the fact that social media plays a huge aspect, not only in promotion, but in reach and in interaction with fans there, how are you both trying to improve your social media reach with the comics that you've created?
Personally, we kind of have a strategy that we've developed for these next couple of years where we're trying to get our feet back under us, and one of the things is really to interact with people. Me and Steve are part of what's being sold with Omen Comics and Revelation Comics, and so having our personality in social media is really important, but also. One of the things we're focusing on is really to get people interested in the books that are already out. Most of the time we're pushing the next book coming out, and we haven't really delved a whole lot into really getting people interested in the 11 books we got already. So that's one big thing we've been focusing on with social media in particular, but really just trying to build a fan base and to get people interested.
And we both have other podcasts that we do. So, we have Omen Revelations where, we do push our own stuff as well. But, a lot of people are going to have to kind of almost look for it because, if you're interested in it, you're going to follow it. That's kind of the way it is. But I have other things that I do for Comic Crusaders, other projects. And And I try as much as possible to like slip in a little bit about our work here. So I do sloppy spoilers with our partners on Red Cross Press, and usually they do a pretty good job of plugging us. And then also I do Cinema Crusaders with many of the same people. So so that gives us a bit of a cross section to reach for, in addition to the other things we do.
So then, what is a podcast that you guys have created offer, and where can we find it too? Because I definitely want to now subscribe to that.
Yeah, Sloppy Spoilers and Cinema Crusaders are both off the Comic Crusaders podcast network. And usually I do one of them. Usually Sloppy Spoilers comes on periodic Tuesdays, and then Cinema Crusaders is technically supposed to be most Fridays, but sometimes things kind of pop up in the middle. But it's usually every Friday. And in fact, we're doing basically the Halloween Madness month, where we're focusing on Halloween stuff. Mike has been part of that as well. So we've been covering the other day we covered Psycho. Last week we covered Seven, and previous to that it was The Exorcist.
Right. I'm actually on. I'm a big horror guy. In fact, because of my writing and stuff I talk about on social media, that's a lot of people tend to know me for that. And I'm actually on another podcast where we do kind of an infotainment type of thing with it's called Countless Corpses Podcast, but we definitely count the bodies. We dig into horror movies, and we talk about behind the scenes and making of stuff and all that. Anyway, that really helps with the spreading the word in particular, because it gets people interested in me as a writer and into horror and stuff like that. That's important. I think that's one of the things that's going to draw people into at least my book specifically.
So then, in regards to being hosts on these particular shows that you're on, how are you trying to set yourself apart as creative people on these shows?
I think when it comes to Sloppy Spoilers, I'm generally assumed to be like I wouldn't want to say the fairest, but I would say like the one that tends to be most optimistic and among the more inclined to give something a chance, whereas the other three are very strongly opinionated and will often dig into things a little bit more than I will. I'm usually a little bit more laid back in that respect. And I think it kind of sets me apart a bit from those guys. And they do, and besides, they do that stuff a lot better than me anyway. So I think it kind of works out.
For sure. I suppose that I'm not really sure what I do that actually sets me apart from the other groups. I tend to try to be as amicable as possible with people. I don't want to argue with stuff. I don't mind having a conversation about something, but I definitely don't want to argue with anybody about it. I think one of the things that I really bring to the situation that I think maybe sets me apart is I know a lot of the behind the scenes stuff and making of content about things, and that's something I can really bring to the show that is different than, say, just coming on and talking about a movie. I could talk about how it was made and what went into the story and all of that.
Nice. It's good stuff. It's always curious to hear fellow podcasters, talk about their show and processes and all that other stuff too. So it's good to see. Let's dive introspective here. Like I said earlier, Michael, you've already answered these, so these will be for Steve specifically. Right. And then we'll talk about where we can find you and how we can support you social media wise. So,
okay,
awesome. Let's do one last disconnect, reconnect, because there's about 10 minutes, and Steve, you might have long answers, so it's all good.
Okay, cool.
And we'll be right back.
All right.
Recording stopped.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
We got both of you. Okay.
Cool.
So, introspective time. At what point are we good enough?
Wow, that's
that's
wow, that is a really tough question. Yeah, go with the hard one, why don't you? Here's kind of the problem I had. I think you get too satisfied with anything, you start getting complacent, and then you start getting not so good. So my feeling is it's like probably when you retire. And I don't feel like either of us are anywhere near close to being actually done with making comics or writing or anything like that. So I would just say, I think enough is kind of like a trap, and I would try to avoid that. At the same time, you don't want to beat yourself constantly for like a misplaced comment. So I think that there's a reasonable balance between, okay, I can take pride in things that I know have done well for me and that, people seem to like, etc. But I think that confining yourself with complacency is basically the death of creativity, and I try to avoid that.
Sure. Did you want me to answer that too?
If you'd like, sure.
I think for me, I wait. I read through the comics several times before I even turn it over to my editor. And for me, I wait until I'm impressed. I have to be able to look at it and say, you know what, I like this. This is good. And until I reach that point, I don't even give it to my editor.
Yeah. What was an early experience where you learned that language had power?
Wow, that's a really tough one. Well, I think it's always like the first book that really has an impact on you, or at least that kind of would be for me. And I think for me, it was reading the Dragonlance Chronicles, because that was the book that made me finally decide, yeah, I'm going to give this writing thing a chance, because I like what was in that book. I just love the characters in it, and I just felt like, okay, I can try to create my own characters and tell my own story and kind of see where it goes. So I would say, that would definitely be one of those.
I think the time I first realized language really had power was when I tried to imagine say a noun that didn't have some other connotation to it other than just the word or definition itself.
That's good. I like that. Everyone usually asks, what's the wisest piece of advice, or what's the most bullshit piece of advice that you've ever received? But what is the second wisest piece of advice that you've received that has stuck with you in your career?
Well, I'm not sure. Exactly. I would probably say, do what you love. If you do something that you have passion for, that's going to sustain you. I mean, really, I'm not in the business of comics, for the money. It's really because I love storytelling, and it's because I love creating things, and it's because I love sharing these things. I think some things you have to get into it because you have genuine fire and genuine passion for the material and for the medium and whatnot. And I think with comics, I've always had that. And I think so. That's like a piece of advice that I've kind of seen like a couple of times. My grandfather used to say that my job was my hobby. So that I would say that's probably why I would go with that.
Did you want to go, Michael?
I believe I answered that on the previous episode there, but I could give it a shot again if you'd like.
If you'd like, it's up to you. If not, I can move on to the next question.
Go ahead and go on to the next question. Okay. I don't think I could give a better answer than I gave the first time.
That is true. Yeah. All right. Last 5 questions. Fifth one's a fun one. You did answer this one as well, Michael, but maybe you have a different change. But
okay.
for the fun one at the end. Last 4 questions are for a documentary called Little Person Amongst Media Giants. It's a documentary I've been putting together for the past 13 or so years. It is 4 questions I wanted to ask Stan Lee. Didn't get a chance, unfortunately, but I asked creative and talented people like yourselves.
Okay.
Now this is for you, Steve. Everyone has one person that inspired them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
In terms of literary influences, it's without a doubt Chris Claremont, because I kind of discovered him when I was around 8 years old, and when I started really getting into Marvel from a little bit of DC. And I think his work spoke to me on a level that I don't think too many others ever have before or since. And I think a lot of it was just that he had these really fascinating characters. I feel like he was trying to say something about acceptance. I felt like his characters were going through the same kind of experiences, that I understood. And so, and I think a lot of that is just the outcast nature of the X-Men. It's just such a wide appeal. And so that the way he did it, I feel like really spoke very much to my own experiences. And I think because of that, that was one of the main reasons I started getting into writing and also into writing comics specifically. And honestly, I wrote an entire, I've written an entire series of articles about Claremont as a writer, and I think a lot of it is, just me kind of giving back, just because I feel like I was inspired along this whole path from reading that. But beyond that, I would just, beyond that, you generally go with the similar answers, my family, of course, is always inspirational in various ways and whatnot. And there are a lot of people that, you kind of stand on in order to get anywhere. But I would say in terms of creatively, definitely Claremont.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Michael. No, sorry.
I have to say one of my biggest influences, speaking of Stan Lee, was Stan Lee himself. I looked at several publishers and they had these universes full of characters, but Stan Lee had a good part in creating a lot of the characters of Marvel. And I wanted that to be me at some point. I wanted to be the guy that created a universe of characters, and that was part of the inspiration for even starting Omen Comics.
Good. Sorry, I like that. From a professional standpoint, you both are creative and talented people. You've been creating comics and have done journalism and other works as well too. So professionally, you're successful in that regard. Don't worry about what Kickstarter says. That means nothing. You've created something. That's the main goal. Do you consider yourself personally successful?
I'm going to say yes, but not necessarily based on how my business is done, but based on my contentment. I believe that success in life is based on being content with where you're at and what you're doing. And in that respect, I'm doing exactly what I love doing. I'm doing what I've always wanted to be doing, and I'm happy doing it, regardless of how it turns out.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I would say creatively, I'm definitely happy. Just getting book published is an achievement. And I've done several with Mike. I have a short story that came out last year, a fantasy short story called Blood and Ashes for ASAP Imagination. I mean, that was one I was really proud to get out there. We're both going to be doing Blood World, which I'm really looking forward to. I know Mike's done some really great stuff with the one that he's done, and I've been starting to see images back from Jeff Bracey, who's our art director, for designs for my characters, and I can't wait to see where that goes. So yeah, I would say as long as you're kind of happy with what you're creatively doing, it's like, are we making tons of money? Are we raking in the dough and being at every single con in the world? No, but that doesn't matter. I think what matters is the creative process, getting things done and working on projects that satisfy you and make you happy. And I think that we've done that.
Yeah.
The reverse of success is failure. How do you deal with your failures?
It's always like a step back leading to a step forward. I think failure is a teaching moment and it is a learning moment. And like, I'm not the biggest fan of The Last Jedi, but I like this line from it. Failure, the greatest teacher is. And that's true, because you have to learn from where something didn't work in order to do better. And I feel like with the Kickstarters, for example, we may not have been having hugely successful Kickstarter campaigns, but I think that the results that we have been getting on the last couple of them have been better than the ones that which we started, and we started making mistakes on it. So I feel like as long as you're kind of learning and growing, eventually you're going to get to the point where it will work. And that, I think, is the important thing.
Definitely. I think I want to say, just building off of what you said there, Steve, experience is the hardest teacher. First comes the test, and then comes the lesson. But I think that I mean, we've really been able to take the times that we have failed, and I think we've been able to come back from it. I think that we've been able to really keep fighting. In my opinion, as long as I like to say, left it all in the ring, I'm all right with failing.
Second last question.
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing, sure. And that is a line from Jean-Luc Picard. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. So, sometimes failure is completely, not necessarily within your control. And in those cases, you just, kind of grin it, bear it, and kind of move on with it.
Nice. And bonus points for the Picard quote.
If I were to keep score of that stuff, I don't know. I'd have to figure that out. I don't have that much time. But it was a good quote. Second last question. The younger generation is looking at your work and they're becoming inspired to be creative in their own way, whether it's as a comic writer, a creative person in some way, shape, or form, or maybe something else entirely creative that maybe they don't know about just yet. How can they inspire the generation that follows them?
I would say by doing the best work they can, putting it out there, trying to show how it can be done, putting an honest commitment into the work, treating people well. I mean, and just, trying to be a good person. I think that in itself, can be very inspiring. So I would say as long as they're putting their most into the ring and, trying to do it ethically and just the best way they possibly can, I think that, that's really the best that they can do.
Yeah. Last question is this, and this is the fun one. If your life was a comic book or a movie, what would its title be, and what would its soundtrack be?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like my life would be that interesting as a comic. I don't know. Slouching into mundanity. I don't. So, and you're asking who would be directing it, or?
No. What soundtrack would you like with?
Oh, what soundtrack for it? Geez. I tend to like video game soundtracks, so I would probably go for maybe the Final Fantasy 7 or 8 soundtrack by Nobuo Uematsu.
Yep, I can get behind that. Especially Sephiroth's anthem that comes in, as Monday approaches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Michael? If you want.
I suppose I would call it No Dead Ends. I've learned in this process that I have come up with 4 or 5 absolutely perfect business plans, and they have all failed, and I've had to come up with something else. But the point is that all those dead ends I reached were not actually dead ends; they were just a different place to turn. So, I mean, I suppose I would say that. I mean, I have tried many things in my life. I tried getting into mixed martial arts. I tried football. I tried playing in a band. I did lots of different stuff. But I think really that no dead ends thing really defines it. As far as soundtracks go, I'm going to say you're probably going to have to go with 80s hair metal or something.
Nice. So we got one end of the spectrum of hair metal to awesome video game soundtrack music. This was a win of a question. I like that. Well, I do hate to say it, Steve and Michael, but that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I was glad to be here. Glad to talk to you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
For those that want to support you and, of course, find Omen Comics and, of course, Revelation Comics and everything else that you've created, where can we find you and how can we support you online?
You can support Omen Comics, Revelation Comics, and Omen Revelations Podcast at Patreon/Omen Comics. We got all kinds of tiers there. We're offering all kinds of, you get inside information, early access to episodes, Patreon exclusive episodes, insider videos. You're guaranteed to get all of our comics in both digital and physical format, even if they're not successful. It's really a great place to do it. As far as finding us, we're on Twitter at Comics Omen and on Facebook at Omen Comics.
Yeah, for me on Twitter, it's Shadewing, at Shadewing, it's one word, and then Revelation Comic, one word as well. And I'll also point out, since we didn't mention it, we also have the Fellowship of the D20, which is our D&D group. Basically, it's the two of us, Nemesis from Raincross Press, and our friend Greg Greeland, and then our DM Neff and Free Girl who helps him out.
Yeah, D&D.
Good stuff. We'll have to talk some D&D on future interviews then as well too. It's something I'm interested in, but I've never done myself, so I don't know if that reduces my geek cred or not, but whatever.
Hey, you're a geek in my book, man.
I appreciate it. Well,
It's the title.
Yeah, exactly. It's just branding is what it is. Yeah. Well, like I said, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You'd, of course, find this interview and 1,000+ others on our website, tgtmedia.com or twogeekstalking.com. That's the word two, not the number two. And, of course, on our YouTube channel, which is a lot more updated than our website, which is youtube.com/c/TGTmedia, and our Patreon, which I'm still working on updating, so bear with me, which is patreon.com/TGTmedia. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking. All right, I got two things for you. This is the introduction. Oops, that's not what. The introduction to the interview, which is just, hi, insert name here, but I have a copy and paste thing, a template for you guys to say. Throw this into the chat. So literally it's just hi, insert name here, creator, writer of, insert your comics, insert any social media, and then the final thing you say is you're watching Two Geeks Talking. So I don't know who wants to go first with that.
I'll go first.
All right. In 3, 2, 1.
Hi, my name is Michael Nunneley. I am the founder of Omen Comics and the co-founder of Revelation Comics. I write Omen, Gallows Men, Dragon Girl, Albino Warrior, Dark Oracles, and Seidr for Revelation Comics. You can find us at Comics Omen, and you can find us at Revelation Comic, and you can find us on Patreon at Omen Comics.
You're watching Two Geeks Talking.
Oh, and you're watching Two Geeks Talking. My bad.
That's all good. Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Sellers. I'm the writer and creator of Blitz. I'm also the co-creator of White Druid and Michael Nero, as well as Guardians of the Lamb. And and you can find me at Shadewing and at Revelation Comic on Twitter. And you're watching Two Geeks Talking. Let me redo that. And you're watching Two Geeks Talking.
Sorry, say that one more time. I cut you off.
And you're watching Two Geeks Talking.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. My schedule is booked for Fridays to release this as of right now, so it would probably be released in January 2023.
Okay.
If that's okay. If not, I can fit this in somewhere else possibly. It depends on if you have like something ongoing or if you have something releasing.
No, that totally works. One of the reasons we wanted to go on this show was, as we talked about, we're trying to build an audience. So, we just want to get the word out. So it coming out in January or any other time would work. It accomplishes the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that.
All right, good to know. I just wanted to make sure that you're at least showcased on a Friday, when you do it.
Yeah, no problem.
Now, Michael, you'll probably receive this link, but it's basically the same thing about the last 4 questions. If you want to forward that on to Steve as well, or if you both have the same email, because it's a company email, I can't recall what email's attached to it, but it's basically 4 questions that asks, how would you like the last questions, etc. As well as the calendar links for the long format and the rapid fire short format, which is mainly for Kickstarter campaigns or crowdfunding campaigns specifically, like what you did last time, Michael. And yeah, so you can share those links with whoever you feel would fit this type of format of an interview, either the long format or the short format.
Okay. I can do that.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I greatly appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Just, step outside in this beautiful weather if you have it, and have a coffee for me because I need a second one.
Yeah, if you're down for it, we're actually, the Fellowship of the D20, our D&D group, is actually playing today.
Oh, nice.
So it'll be on YouTube and on Twitter.
We usually start around 7 Eastern.
I have an interview that was previously scheduled at 11 at 7 o'clock tonight Eastern, so I can't make it. But
you can always watch it on a rewatch.
Yeah.
We're on YouTube. It's you can find it. Fellowship
of the D20, you said, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
And yes, I'm a huge Tolkien fan, and that's why I named it that.
Hey, not faulting you. That's a really cool name. I do like it. So.
All right.
All right. Have a great weekend, you guys.
You too.
Yeah. Thanks again.
See you around.
See ya. Mm-hmm.